Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. Outkick the Show, brought to you as always by Oddshark. Go to Oddshark for all of your gambling and informational related needs, including this crazy poll. Do you think that O.J. Simpson will get parole, or will O.J. Simpson get parole in 2017? Right now it is minus 200 that he will. So prepare yourself for the juice once more to be loose. All right, several things to hit, giving you an idea of what we're going to hit here on the rundown. We are going to talk about the NBA draft results. We will talk about Johnny Depp and his suggestion that it's time for an actor to kill the president. We will talk about California banning travel to several states for sports teams. Among those states, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, and more. We will discuss in great detail. And the Russia investigation. A poll is out that says independents actually think there's nothing to this story and that it's all being, pardon the pun, trumped up. We will dive into all of that and more. Again, I am Clay Travis, and we began with the NBA draft. The NBA draft last night, I thought there were 4 or 5 big takeaways. One big takeaway. I can't believe the Bulls just threw in the towel like they did. They tossed Jimmy Butler to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Are there any Minnesota Timberwolves fans out there? And thank you for the Super Hearts. It's a new addition to Periscope that I think is going to be insanely productive. Are there any Minnesota Timberwolves fans out there? Yes, I'm sure that there are. Massive day for you guys. I think you could become the 3rd or the 4th best team in the West. Lonzo Ball finally goes to the Lakers after all the talk. LeVar Ball immediately predicts they will be in the playoffs in his first year. Nothing yet on Paul George. Where's his destination going to be? Are the Indiana Pacers blowing it? And I thought an incredible pickup by the Golden State Warriors for Jordan Bell, the huge all-everything 6'8" forward who, if you watch the game between Oregon and Kansas, absolutely took over that game and dominated inside. I remember it big time because I lost a lot of money on that game. In fact, I think it was a blood bank guarantee. And I appreciate all of you coming to hang out. So those are the big takeaways. I apologize that it's 120 degrees there in Phoenix. That is not ideal. And it is unfortunately raining all over the South. Okay, so several people are asking, what are these Super Hearts things? So you guys know that I own a lot of stock in Twitter, and that I'm a big believer in Periscope. In addition to Facebook, I am doing this show on Periscope. Periscope is now trying to figure out a way to monetize all the different videos that go on Periscope. Obviously, I monetize it myself through ads. You can email me at claytravis@gmail.com if you want to be able to advertise on this show. We're almost filled up for the fall. Oddshark's the presenting sponsor, oh, by the way. And what this allows you to do, and I was actually emailing with the head of Periscope yesterday, is this allows you to basically give me an endorsement of the highest magnitude. You guys who are on Periscope can all go buy some form of tokens, and then you can share those tokens when you particularly agree with something that I have said. What I am suggesting I would love to see happen, and I think this is going to happen on Periscope, and if you're a Twitter investor, you'll probably find this a little bit entertaining. What I have suggested is, if you pay enough money, then I can have a section of the show where I will give you a direct shout out. You can record it, you can then clip it and share it digitally. So, for instance, if somebody were having their 21st birthday and you're trying to think, okay, what am I going to do to give somebody? You could pay a set fee. I'll give you a shout out. You can clip that and then share it all across distribution and say happy birthday so-and-so or happy anniversary or whatever you would like to do. I think that it can be pretty valuable. Yes, I would become somewhat like a cam girl, except I would not be fucking myself with a dildo during the show, and also you wouldn't want to see me naked. So it's just like cam girls, except that I won't be naked, and I won't be banging myself with a dildo, and none of you would want to see me naked. So it's just like that, all right? Except I'm clothed, and I'm telling you to go buy Outkick gear instead. But I think that could be pretty cool. The other thing I think that would be very cool is if I guarantee, there's so many things coming in right now. There's so many different ways for questions to come in now. I miss a lot of them. So what would be cool is if there were like a folder that held questions, and if you paid a certain amount, if you guaranteed that you were going to be able to get an answer to your question, then that is 100%, I think, would be a very lucrative way for people like me who are doing these shows to also make Periscope money because they get a share of the overall revenue. Given the fact that there are millions of hours, I would imagine, of content that's produced on Periscope, you would only need a small fraction of that to turn it into a decent amount of revenue. So now you can buy these things called Super Hearts, and it should be a pretty cool concept to allow these videos to be monetized by people across the board, but also for Periscope to pay for what has to be a fairly expensive amount of hosting costs to be able to host these hours of video. Now, on the flip side, Facebook, what they're doing is I can hit a button here on the $sign, and I believe that button is right here. Let me hit it. And when you hit 300 people live, it will allow you to run a video, and those videos run, and they're targeted just to you guys. So only you guys will see an individual video. That is, Facebook can decide, oh, that's Jim. I know that Jim likes likes Ford trucks or whatever it's going to be, and you would be more likely to see a Facebook video. So they're all trying to figure out exactly how they're going to monetize these individual broadcasts, and I'm very optimistic on both of them. So that is going to be, I think, a pretty cool setup. So that is the answer for what's going on with the Super Hearts. That's why it works. Yeah, it should count as an inside stock. No, it should not count as an inside stock tip. Look, I'm telling you guys to go buy Twitter because one of the first places that can do the Super Hearts is Periscope. So, is me on Periscope. So if you are on Periscope right now and you start thinking, man, that sounds like it could be a pretty good business opportunity, it's one reason Twitter stock has gone up a decent amount in the past couple of days. I'm very bullish on what Twitter is going to be able to make from video, which is why I have been suggesting for a long time now, buy Twitter stock and hold it. I still own a lot of it. I own, not trying to brag, but I own thousands of shares of Twitter. And I think I'm going to make a lot of money off of them at some point in time. So that's based on the way that I use the broadcast. That's based on understanding how this works. So that is, in fact, the truth. So NBA draft, again, big winner, Minnesota Timberwolves. We're still waiting to see what is going to happen with everything else that rolls in. Remember, I can block you from commenting at all times. Anytime you guys get annoyed with somebody who's posting too much, then I can end them. So that is the truth. That's easy to do, and it is easy to set up. All right. Again, NBA draft, big takeaway. We still don't know what's going to happen with Paul George. He's the last big kind of playmaker out there who's we figure is going to be traded. Still have to figure out what's going to happen with Blake Griffin. Assumption seems to be he's going to re-up with the Clippers. What's going to happen with Chris Paul? Ditto. The assumption seems to be, although we'll see whether or not the Spurs get involved. And we have to figure out what's going to happen with our guy Gordon Hayward. So that is all of the NBA uncertainty that's going on there. In general, you guys know this. There was a lot of discussion about whether one and done is the right move or whether it's the wrong move. I think one and done is a broken system. I think it's absurd that guys go to college campuses for 9 months. I understand that John Calipari has had 24 different one-and-done players or whatever it's been, but I think that the system that should exist, and I said this on the morning radio show, Outkick the Coverage, which you can listen to on over 250 AM FM stations as well as Sirius XM Channel 83, is I think what should happen is if you want to, they should have the same system as baseball. If you want to go pro, that's fine. I've got no issues with it at all. 18-year-olds should be able to make a living doing whatever they are like 18-year-olds. I think that the way to do that is allow your name to be entered. If you get drafted in the first round, you go into the NBA. If you don't get drafted in the first round, if you're a second-round pick, maybe you can make a decision about whether or not you want to go to college or the NBA. But if you go to college, the moment that you enroll in college, I think you should not be able to leave college for 3 years. So you should have to commit to 3 years of college basketball. Once you commit to 3 years of college basketball, that's fine. Then you come back out. I think that would help college basketball, which I think it's hard to keep tabs on everybody that is following college basketball when the one-and-dones come in. NCAA tournament, you're busy. You've been watching the NFL. You got a family to take around. You're just busy with work. And it's hard for people to sit around and watch every sport. And so college basketball, I think, has lost in a big way. And the reason they've lost in a big way is because the stars don't stay very long now. And then they go to the NBA, and nobody cares about the regular season. So I think college basketball would be immeasurably helped. If you go to college basketball, you stay for 3 years, but you have the right at 18 to go straight to the NBA. And if you go straight to the NBA, then obviously you never get to play in college again. But it should be like college baseball, where as part of the NBA contracts, they guarantee you college tuition wherever you want to go for the rest of your life. So if you end up being a guy who's only in the league for 4 or 5 years and your career ends, you go back to college, you've made a few $1 million, and you get hooked up. Great stat. People say, oh, Kwame Brown, what a bust he is. I can't believe what a loser Kwame Brown is. Do you know what Kwame Brown made in his career in the NBA? This blows people's minds. $58 million. Kwame Brown, number 1 overall pick, went to the Washington Wizards, was not very good, ended up transferring around, played for the Lakers, bounced all over the league. He made $58 million. That's the vast majority more than even really good players often make in the NFL who might be Hall of Fame caliber. That kind of puts it in perspective. Kwame Brown, 18 years old. People love to cite him. Darko Milicic. People also say, oh, Darko, what a bust Darko was. You know Darko made over $40 million in the NBA too? If only everybody could fail like guys who fail and get drafted in the first round fail, they will be good forever. That's before or after taxes guy. We need him to roll in and say, was that before or after taxes? Okay, so that's my theory on the NBA in general. Johnny Depp. I don't know if you guys saw this. I think it's a major story. I haven't been in front of the television. I haven't really seen how much it's getting covered. But last night late, and by late I mean like 10 o'clock, because I go to bed by 10 or 10:30 because I get up at 4 a.m. every day, Johnny Depp said as follows. This is unbelievable. I think he, meaning Trump, needs help, and there are a lot of wonderful, dark, dark places he could go. And then he continued. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president, obviously referring to John Wilkes Booth killing Abraham Lincoln? I want to clarify, Depp said. I am not an actor. I lie for a living. However, it has been a while, and maybe it is time. Now, even if he was trying to make a joke, this is an unbelievable line to say. And again, this is Johnny Depp. I think he, meaning Trump, needs help, and there are a lot of wonderful, dark, dark places he could go. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president? I want to clarify, I am not an actor. I lie for a living. However, it has been a while, and maybe it is time. Now, what I wrote about in my column was the election of Donald Trump has driven left-wing Hollywood insane. Whether it's Kathy Griffin holding up a severed head of Donald Trump, whether it is people advocating for insanity. Let me just say this to begin with. I can't believe I have to say this, but those statements are unacceptable. And you are listening and listen to regularly and watching a First Amendment absolutist. So I don't think in any way that Johnny Depp should be penalized for what he said about Donald Trump under a legal system. But couple of additional thoughts. Couple of thoughts here. One, why was Ronald Reagan attempted to be assassinated? It was because a crazy guy was trying to impress Jodie Foster. If you remember that story, what's wild about it is Ronald Reagan got shot because a crazy person was trying to impress Jodie Foster. I don't know if Johnny Depp remembers that, but there are undoubtedly thousands and thousands of crazy people, maybe tens of thousands, potentially even hundreds of thousands of crazy people who are huge fans of Johnny Depp. When he says that he thinks it's time for the president to get shot, you or I might say, okay, Johnny Depp isn't really saying that. He's speaking in a hyperbolic fashion. He's trying to just draw an attention to himself. He's exaggerating for effect. He maybe even is trying to make a joke. We can contextualize that speech because our brains work. If your brain is misguided and you believe that Johnny Depp is speaking to you, which many people probably do. I said before, when I worked on Capitol Hill, we used to have a crazy people drawer. And it would be all the crazy mail that I would open up working on Capitol Hill for a congressman back in the day. And I was terrified by how many crazy people were paying attention to politics and would write in on issues. And crazy people meaning like they cut out letters like you would see in an old school ransom note with, the O is from one magazine, the M is from a random newspaper, like all these different places. A lot of people out there believe that, I'm going to be honest with you, that Johnny Depp is like their idol, is speaking to them. Like even in movies that Johnny Depp is speaking to them. And so it's terrifying. It's terrifying to think about the fact that Johnny Depp basically just gave license to all these crazy people to do exactly what the guy who shot Ronald Reagan did. What was the guy's name who shot Ronald Reagan? John Hinckley, was that his name? I can't even remember his name right now. But the guy who shot Ronald Reagan, he did it to try to impress Jodie Foster. He did it to try to impress an actress. And now Johnny Depp is doing this. And what's crazy is, it's unbelievable to me that political discourse has gone in this direction this rapidly. And the example I used in my mailbag, I wrote about this. I said, is there any way that Johnny Depp would stand up and say something racist, homophobic, or sexist in front of that whole audience? There's no way he would do it, right? Because it would be considered immediately offensive, and he would worry about the loss of his career. He would worry about the impact of the whole Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, all those things, right? Yet he feels comfortable standing up in front of a huge audience and suggesting that maybe it's time for somebody to kill Donald Trump. In the grand scheme of things, if you had to rank the awfulness of speech, okay, it's always difficult, but isn't that worse than a racial slur, a homophobic comment, or a sexist comment? Those comments suck, right? But they aren't directly encouraging people to commit murder because you don't like the president. I think it's amazing to me the amount of attention that a homophobic, a racist, or a sexist comment directly would get versus a comment like this that encourages people to kill the president. And I don't understand why people in Hollywood can't see that connection, that what they have is a massive platform, and when they make comments like these, they encourage people who may not be 100% right in the head to make decisions about an issue like that I think makes it, frankly, more dangerous for Donald Trump. Regardless of what your political persuasion is, what you have to do is pretty simple. You know, if you disagree with somebody who's president, try to get him beaten. Try to beat him in 2020. If you disagree with somebody who's president, try to use your Senate support or your House support to keep them from advancing their political agenda. But the idea that seems to have taken root of late, that because you disagree with Donald Trump, it's okay to suggest that he should be killed. It's okay to hold up a picture of him being decapitated and take a picture of him being decapitated. It's okay to go overseas and suggest that somebody should kill him. I can't believe it. I think the Johnny Depp comments are beyond the pale. I think they are indefensible. And I want to tell you in a moment something else. But first, I'm going to tell you all about my friends at Magical Realty. Want to create a family tradition of vacationing in Orlando every year for very little money? Visit magicalrealty.com and find the vacation ownership that suits you best right now. Right now, you can own a Sheraton Vistana timeshare in Orlando for only $500 compared to the $18,000 the original owner paid. If owning isn't your thing, they specialize in rentals for Aruba, Orlando, and Hawaii. Contact Magical Realty to help you save big on your future vacations. Email them at info@magicalrealty.com. That's info@magicalrealty.com. You can also go check out magicalrealty.com. Interesting story here, too. In addition to what I just told you, there is a poll out from CNN. And I think this is a fascinating poll because of what it suggests. And I'm going to go ahead and find this. I think that the opposition is actually starting to help Donald Trump. And that is because I believe they are overreaching on this Russia story. Right now, this is from Brian Stelter, who I believe works at CNN. Is the coverage of Trump irresponsible and over-dramatized? 90% of Republicans feel it is irresponsible and over-dramatized. And of course, 63% of Democrats believe it's responsible and proper, although even 16% of Democrats believe it's irresponsible and over-dramatized. What's more interesting here is nearly 50% of middle-of-the-road people believe that it is irresponsible, over-dramatized. What I think the Democrats are doing is they're playing right into Donald Trump's hands. You saw in all these special elections, they are trying to combat Donald Trump in ways that are illegitimate, right? I think in the mind of many people. And there are lots of reasons to dislike Donald Trump. The idea that I believe that it was because Russia colluded and somehow there was a conspiracy involved in getting Donald Trump elected is totally crazy. It's balderdash, okay? If you look at what Russia actually did, and I can't believe I have to keep saying this, but I'm saying it. The DNC and John Podesta were idiots. They allowed themselves to be hacked. And then all the Russians did was release these emails and allow them to turn into media stories. It's amazing if you really break it down. What Russia is, at its most basic level, is the media publicizing everything that was in the DNC reports, as well as everything in the Podesta emails, and then simultaneously saying, look, Donald Trump is in cahoots with Russia. To me, Russia didn't influence the election improperly when all they did was allow more emails to come out. Think about this for a minute. All Russia did was shine a brighter light on our democracy. If for some reason a news organization had managed to get these DNC emails that showed that the DNC was colluding to get Hillary Clinton the nomination instead of Bernie Sanders, and if some news organization had gotten information from John Podesta's emails legally, like if they had been blind copied on them and somebody had forwarded those emails to them, that organization would probably win the Pulitzer Prize because the information in the emails was correct and it shined a brighter light on American democracy. So my troubling way in terms of this investigation into Russia is, how can you say that the investigation of Russia was hacking when all they did was shine a brighter light on what Democrats were actually doing? Now, would it have been more fair if the Republicans had also been dumb enough to allow the RNC to be hacked, and also a major RNC donor had been employee had been hacked as well, and all those emails had gone public? Sure, that would have been fairer. But just because the Republicans weren't dumb enough to fall bait to phishing scandals doesn't mean that the Russians did anything improper. Furthermore, the single worst way for Russia to influence Donald Trump would be by getting caught helping to elect him, because all that guarantees is that he's not going to be lenient on Russia. That's where I don't follow the logic here. If Russia wanted to influence the election and get Donald Trump elected, what they should have done is something that could never be traced back to them. Instead of getting caught by the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, and everybody else, because all that does is guarantee that Donald Trump is not going to actually provide any substantive help to Russia. I mean, why can people not follow this? Conspiracies only work, one, if the conspirators are competent. And everything in the Trump administration gets leaked 10 minutes after it happens. So it certainly is not that. Two, it only works if there's a benefit. The benefit might well be Hillary not being elected, but all they've done is guarantee that they can't get very many benefits from Donald Trump, because if Trump does anything lenient to Russia, it makes it look like there's a conspiracy, even if there's not. I don't know why I'm the only person who sees this. Sometimes I think, my God, how do I not have my own show where I can talk about sports, politics, Game of Thrones, whatever the hell I want, in a more intelligent fashion than anybody else who has a television show? Like, am I the only person who sees this? Why does my brain uniquely make sense of things in a way nobody else does? I don't know. But my God, this is why Outkick keeps blowing up, because of simple things like this. Okay, another crazy story. Another crazy story for you guys. California has banned travel to any state. This is an unbelievable story too. California has banned travel to any state where there are laws that they believe discriminate against LGBTQ people. Think about this for a minute. California, a state, is now banning, theoretically, according to sports reporting coverage in the LA Times, the Sacramento Daily Sun, or B, or whatever the hell the newspaper's called there, banning sports travel to Tennessee, Texas, Kentucky, Alabama, and North Carolina. Also, Kansas and a couple of other states, because they disapprove of specific legislation that exists in those states. This is a ridiculous decision. I'm not even sure if it's constitutional. Have you guys not heard about this yet? I think it's a massive story. So, right now, this year, I believe it is UCLA is traveling to Memphis to play a football game, and Cal is traveling to UNC to play a football game. Under the rules promulgated by the Attorney General of California, those schools would not be able to travel and play games in those states because of individual state laws that people in California positions of power disagree with. This is crazy to me. In theory, this would mean that, for instance, Kentucky and UCLA's basketball game would not be allowed to happen if this were next year because UCLA wouldn't be able to travel and play against Kentucky. And Texas, if they were playing Texas A&M, if UCLA were playing Texas A&M next year, they cannot travel either. That Texas A&M UCLA rivalry would not be able to happen either. If you want to check this out, go to Outkick.com and you can see several links inside of my mailbag writing about that. Again, and by the way, you can now go to Outkick.com. I own the website Outkick. So if you just go to Outkick.com, it's even easier than having to remember. Just go to Outkick, click in the mailbag. You can read all about this. This is terrifying to me. First of all, I'm an old school Federalist, okay? I'm an old school Federalist in the sense that I believe that under the Constitution, the idea was that we should have 50 individual laboratories to allow individual states to experiment with laws and figure out whether they might work on a federal level. And if the federal government does not take a power away from the states, then the states should have the right to do that. That's why I believe, for instance, that sports gambling should be legalized in individual states if they decide to do it, just like lotteries are. And that's also, by the way, why every state can set their own laws on liquor, their own laws on casinos. Like every individual state, the power that is not taken by the federal government descends to the state government. And so long as the state governments act in a constitutional manner, they have the right to figure out what helps the best, the health, the welfare, the well-being of their individual states. Now, sometimes I think that leads to absurdity. For instance, if I lived in Utah, it would drive me crazy that I couldn't buy a lottery ticket if I wanted to, or that beer wasn't as available as it was elsewhere. But that's because states are individual laboratories, okay? So what I find scary about this is, let's think about it in a larger sense. I don't know how this would work in the NCAA tournament, for instance. If you were a Cal fan or you were a UCLA fan and your team got sent to Texas or Tennessee or North Carolina or Kentucky, as very easily could happen, would your team be allowed to travel there and play under existing interpretations of California law? Moreover, the purpose of state laws is that they only extend to state borders. To me, it's very scary to think about individual states getting into wars basically with each other over the socioeconomic decisions made within those states and allow, again, this absurdity where California decides that some rule they don't think is promulgated fairly, and as a result, they don't allow people to travel to play games. Here's a great question for you. In 2018, the state of Texas at Jerry World is hosting one of the college football playoff games. What would happen if UCLA or Cal were put into that game? Under this policy promulgated by California, which is publicized and in effect, they would in theory not be able to play. Moreover, this also stops teams like, let's say you're a UCLA and North Carolina basketball fan. In theory, the two schools could not play a home and home. Same thing with Kentucky. Let's say you're an A&M fan and you want to keep the rivalry going against UCLA. That can't happen. Let's say you're a Tennessee fan and you love the home and home between Tennessee and Cal and Tennessee and UCLA, even though Tennessee was crappy then. It's a disaster. Somebody's asking about USC. I don't think it would apply to USC because USC is a private school, so I don't think they would be restricted under California state law, but it's a great question. It's a great question. So this, to me, is absurd. Now, UCLA and Memphis are allowed to play, and Cal and UNC are allowed to play because there was an exemption for contracts that were entered into before January 1st of 2017. But this is something I think that raises all sorts of fascinating questions. One, what if Texas decided it wanted to play the Pac-12? Does that mean that the other Pac-12 schools couldn't travel to Austin, Texas to play against the Longhorns? Theoretically, yes. Furthermore, and this is an interesting question, how in the world can the schools in California be forbidden to do what they are already contractually required to do as member institutions of the NCAA and the Pac-12? In other words, If the NCAA puts a team from California in Texas in the NCAA tournament, are you really telling me that they cannot travel and play in the NCAA tournament? They're obligated to do so under existing contractual law. I think this law and this promulgation of this regulation is unconstitutional. I think it's a restraint of trade. I think it's a violation of interstate commerce. Look, in my opinion, every state should have the right to make every law that it wants, but it should not be in the business of reacting to the other laws that states make and then inhibiting travel between those jurisdictions based on the use of taxpayer dollars. It's happening much beyond sports, by the way. There's a big conference going on in Memphis. You can go read the article at the LA Times, and there were like 100 people who were going to go from a California university to present an important paper, and they were not allowed to do it under the auspices of the university because of this regulation and its interpretation. Just a ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous situation. If I were a fan of UCLA or Cal, because we obviously talk a lot about sports here, I would think this was absurd. If I were a resident of California, even if you're a huge believer in lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer rights, I think I got all that right, then I would still think it was absurd. If I were gay and lived in California and rooted for the Bruins or for the Golden Bears, Cal or UCLA, I would still think it was ridiculous that my alma mater could not travel and play teams from Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas, and Kansas in those venues. It would mean that Kansas can't play UCLA. You can't come play a game at the field house there in Kansas, a basketball game that everybody would love to see. Another great question. Are coaches allowed to travel and recruit in those states? In theory, my answer would be no, because they're state employees traveling across state lines and giving money theoretically. So I just think this thing's a mess. It's something that the media needs to dive into and cover. I have written about it. I'm the first person in sports that I've seen writing about it. This thing has bubbled up because Fresno State is scheduled to play Alabama this year, and because Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, and South Dakota, I think, were just added to this list to be banned. It's a total mess. It's a total mess, and reasonable people out there need to fight against arbitrary and, frankly, scary laws that people are trying to pass and do just to get political points. We don't need states fighting over individual state laws. That's my belief. Okay. I appreciate all of you coming to watch. This is the Friday edition of Outkick the Coverage, Outkick the Show. Sorry, we'll be back on Monday. Anything crazy happens, I'll come on here on the weekend. If you enjoyed this show, then share it with your friends. I got to get out for a couple of meetings this afternoon before my day is over. I appreciate all of you supporting Outkick. Go download Outkick the Show, the podcast. Go download Outkick the Coverage, the podcast. Go read the mailbag at Outkick if you want more information about the California issue we were just discussing. Again, we're ahead of the curve in terms of how much attention it's getting, but I think that it is an important issue to be discussed. Love all of you. Go buy your Outkick shirts at OutkickGear.com. Remember, you want to make money, go check out OddsShark for all your gambling and informational related needs. I love you guys. I am Clay Travis. DBAP, don't be a pussy. Hashtag DBAP. I will see you guys at the latest early on Monday morning. Love you all. DBAP. Have great weekends.